The silence in the Grand Assembly Hall was deafening. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human delegation's podium, her weathered hands gripping the crystalline surface as she delivered humanity's final words to the Galactic Council. For 3 centuries we have sat among you, offering our perspectives, our innovations, and our unwavering belief that cooperation could transcend the boundaries of species and worlds, Elena said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber where representatives from 847 different civilizations sat in stunned silence. Today we take our leave. The Zephyrian Chancellor, his silver tendrils writhing in what Elena had learned to recognize as distress, leaned forward in his elevated seat. Ambassador Vasquez, surely we can find common ground. The humans' departure would be unprecedented. Elena's smile was sad but resolute. Unprecedented, yes, but necessary. The events leading to this moment had been building for decades. It began with the Corlan incident, where human diplomats had insisted on intervening in what other species considered an internal matter, the systematic oppression of a slave caste. Then came the refugee crisis of Sector 7, where humans had unilaterally opened their borders to millions of displaced beings, while other council members debated protocol for months. Most recently, there was the vote on the Artificial Intelligence Rights Amendment. Humans had stood alone, arguing passionately that synthetic beings deserved the same protections as organic life. The measure failed 846 to 1. The humans, whispered Kethvar, the ancient crystalline representative. They see souls where we see tools. As Elena's shuttle departed the council station, the real consequences of humanity's withdrawal began to manifest across the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, the central trading hub, markets began to fluctuate wildly. Human goods, particularly their entertainment media and comfort foods, became increasingly scarce. But more critically, human banks and financial institutions began withdrawing their stabilizing influence from interstellar commerce. The human concept of ethical investing had quietly become the backbone of galactic economic stability. Dr. Thane Morrison, head of the Human Medical Corps, was in the middle of treating plague victims on Kepler 442b when the withdrawal order came through. His team of volunteer doctors, nurses, and researchers had been working around the clock for 6 months to contain the outbreak. "Sir," said his assistant, Dr. Sarah Chen, approaching with tears in her eyes, "the council's emergency session just concluded. They're not sending aid. They say the Keplerians should have maintained better biosecurity protocols." Thane looked out at the makeshift hospital where hundreds of alien beings lay suffering, their families keeping vigil beside crude beds. "Pack the essential supplies into personal gear," he ordered quietly. "We're staying. But the withdrawal order applies to official council operations," Thane said firmly. "This is a humanitarian mission now." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human teachers remained at their posts on frontier worlds, claiming personal leave. Human engineers continued maintaining critical infrastructure on worlds where other species had deemed it economically inefficient to provide support. Human artists kept creating works that celebrated the diverse cultures of the galaxy, even as official cultural exchange programs were terminated. On Earth, President Chen Wei addressed the global population. "We leave the council not in anger, but in sorrow. We cannot, in good conscience, remain part of an organization that prioritizes procedure over compassion, efficiency over empathy." The Galactic Council's emergency sessions grew increasingly frantic as the true scope of human involvement in galactic civilization became apparent. The Altarians discovered that their planet's atmospheric processors, critical technology they thought was Altarian-designed, had been subtly enhanced over decades by human engineers. Without ongoing human maintenance, their world faced ecological collapse within a year. The prestigious Andorian University system found itself in chaos when they realized that 40% of their research breakthroughs over the past century had involved human collaboration. Their most celebrated discoveries, cures for interstellar diseases, faster-than-light communication improvements, even their famous philosophy of harmonious coexistence, all bore the invisible fingerprints of human insight. Perhaps most devastatingly, the Council's own peacekeeping forces began to fracture. For generations, human mediators had been the unofficial counselors and morale boosters for mixed-species military units. Without their presence, old prejudices and territorial disputes began resurging among the peacekeepers themselves. Ambassador Vexhai of the Hegemony pulled Chancellor Zethys aside after a particularly contentious session. "We must bring them back," she urged. "My intelligence report suggests 17 member worlds are considering their own departures. They're calling it the human way, prioritizing moral principles over political convenience." The Chancellor's response was interrupted by an urgent communiqué from the Outer Rim. The brutal warlord Krexnoth, dormant for 50 years, had emerged from his stronghold and begun conquering frontier worlds. His timing was no coincidence. He knew the humans were gone. "This is what concerns you?" the Chancellor asked his aide. "No, sir. It's how quickly the attacks are being repelled. Small groups of independent contractors, all human, all claiming to be acting without official sanction, are appearing wherever Krexnoth strikes. They're not just fighting him. They're organizing local defenses and training militia forces." The Chancellor's worst fears were being realized. The humans weren't simply leaving, they were becoming something more dangerous to the established order. They were becoming an inspiration. 6 months after the departure, the Galactic Council faced its greatest crisis in millennia, not from external threats or economic collapse, but from something far more revolutionary: hope. Across the galaxy, ordinary beings were asking why their governments couldn't be more like the humans, willing to sacrifice profit for principle, to risk stability for justice. The day humans departed the Galactic Council was the day the cosmos learned what it had lost. Not just another member species, but its conscience. And in that loss, something unexpected was born. A galaxy-wide awakening to the possibility that civilization could be something greater than the sum of its compromises. In her final report, filed not to any government but to the Galactic Information Network, Elena Vasquez wrote, "We leave not as conquerors or judges, but as gardeners who have planted seeds of hope. Whether they grow depends not on us, but on the courage of those who remain." The seeds, it seemed, were already beginning to sprout.